Trump's recent shift has surprised many people. His previously tough stance on China now seems to have softened. According to reports from American media, in order to facilitate a meeting with the Chinese president and reach a trade agreement, Trump has become the least hawkish person in White House meetings. Behind this shift is the impact of a series of recent economic data. China's economic data for the first half of the year was exceptionally impressive. GDP grew by 5.3% year-on-year, the CPI stopped falling and stabilized, total imports and exports hit a new high for the same period, and the trade deficit set a new record. These figures strongly countered the expected effects of Trump's tariff policies. Trump's tariff policy was originally intended to hit China's exports, but the result seems to have actually stabilized China's domestic demand. If China's economy continues this momentum in the second half of the year, Trump will face even greater difficulties. He will struggle to explain to the American public why the ongoing tariff war hasn't crushed Chinese exports, but instead has made American consumers bear the cost of rising prices, while the US itself is bleeding. For Trump, who is used to winning, this is undoubtedly a huge challenge. America's own economic data is also putting pressure on Trump. In June, the CPI rose by 2.7% year-on-year, higher than expected and marking the largest year-on-year increase since February. This means that the rise in US inflation is not over yet, and the interest rate cuts Trump is hoping for may be further delayed. Even worse, the core CPI also saw its first increase since February, indicating that the impact of tariffs has already started to be passed on to prices. If the increase in core PCE exceeds that of core CPI, the likelihood that the Federal Reserve will not cut interest rates this year will rise significantly. Facing such a severe situation, Trump has no choice but to reconsider his strategy. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent stated that the August 12 deadline for the U.S.-China tariff truce is flexible, suggesting that the two countries will not immediately restart the tariff war. The current negotiations are in a very good state, and there is hope to meet with the Chinese side in a third country soon. The meeting is expected to take place around early August. In preparation for the upcoming negotiations, Trump is sending signals of easing tensions with China on one hand, while on the other, he is actively reassuring the American public, especially the Republican base. He went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and at the Energy and Innovation Summit, he spoke at length about the leading position of the US AI industry, claiming that America is in its golden age and that China can only try to catch up. He emphasized that the United States will not let China succeed, but will compete with them in a very friendly manner. Afterwards, he signed the Fentanyl Control Act. Although he once again blamed China, he also, unusually, acknowledged China's cooperation in combating the fentanyl issue, and predicted that China would soon sentence those involved to death. These remarks were both a signal to China and an explanation to the American public, attempting to downplay the threat of China's economic development and to emphasize China's cooperation with the US on certain issues. In fact, Trump's move was laying the groundwork for possible concessions, seeking domestic support for potential agreements, and avoiding being labeled a traitor. Some details also hint at the concessions Trump might make. For example, Nvidia has resumed sales of H20 chips to China. According to Bloomberg, this was done at Trump's behest. First, in May, he banned the export of chip design software to China, and then later lifted the ban. The entire process was highly secretive, with many American officials kept in the dark. This level of secrecy suggests that Trump was already preparing for the possibility of losing the tariff war. If China refused to make concessions, the US would have no choice but to roll back its policies. Keeping things under wraps could minimize negative fallout and make it easier for Trump to keep using his winning strategy among his supporters. In order to reach a trade agreement with China, Trump clearly needs to make some concessions, but he will work hard to package and conceal these costs to win the understanding of the American public. For China, the concessions Trump is currently offering may not be enough, and there is still a possibility he could backtrack. The upcoming US-China negotiations still require a cautious optimism. Trump's shift in strategy reflects the complexity of the US-China trade war. The resilience of China's economy, along with inflationary pressures within the United States, have both forced Trump to reassess his China policy. He is trying to find a balance between maintaining his own political standing and reaching a trade agreement, but how much he will ultimately concede and whether he can successfully reassure the American public remain to be seen. The direction of this trade war will continue to be influenced by multiple factors, and the upcoming US-China negotiations will be a critical turning point. Whether Trump can successfully package his concessions and ultimately reach an agreement will directly affect the future trajectory of US-China relations and the stability of the global economy. He needs to find a balance between the narrative of winning and the harsh realities he faces, which will be an extremely challenging task. Every move will be scrutinized and interpreted by various forces both at home and abroad. Trump's political acumen will face a severe test.